So welcome to everybody who is listening in to this video. This is the first video in a series of 6 that Richard and I will be releasing. We are going to be talking about the power of brand and how it's equally as important for accountants and accounting firms as it is for any other business. And we'll go through a series of 6 videos with you that looks at how it is important and what you can achieve with your brand over the next 5-6 videos. So before we go into the topic of the day, let's introduce ourselves and talk to you a little bit about what we hope to achieve and, you know, a little bit about our respective businesses. So Richard, over to you. I've been told that I am going to be managing this, so I will ask you to introduce yourself at this point and let us know who you are.
Thank you, Philippa. Hello, everyone. I'm Richard Brewin. I'm a chartered accountant. I've been a chartered accountant this is my 40th year now, so a long time. For much of that time, I've spent it working in practice, everything from top 4 firms down to national, regional, local firms at partner levels, building my own firms, selling my own firms. So I've been at very much the sharp end of the practice. 2008 was when I sold the last of our own firms. And since 2008, I've worked with accountants themselves, working with small firms of accountants, typically 1 to 4, 5 partner firms, providing them with mentoring support and enabling them to develop and run their own firms and get an awful lot more reward and satisfaction for how they work their firms.
Great, thank you, Richard. And I'm Philippa Haynes from Insight 101, a brand and marketing specialist. And my mantra is imagine your firm, but better. And that is all about ensuring that you have a brand, you are branded up, and that you have all of the benefits that brings, such as getting the right clients to you, controlling your client portfolio, building a fan base of loyal clients, and just working on your business and thinking about the future as much as working in your business. And I think Richard and I are here today because we have very similar insights around the importance of brand. And obviously we work very closely with accountants. I have my own sweet spot where I'm talking to the smaller firms as well, whether it's 1 to 5, something like that. Typically, people who have come out of the big corporate environment because they want to do things differently and shake things up. But of course, once they're on their own, they realise that they are totally in charge of their own business, not only the day-to-day mechanics of being an accountant, but equally about driving the marketing, having a point of view. And actually, one of the most sticky points is getting your social media right. Now, all of those things are about brands and what the foundations are of your business and your message. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Anything to add here, Richard?
Really, just to make the point that what you said there about that sense of being out on your own is the big driver as far as I'm concerned. You know, I've worked with so many accountants over the years and I've been in the same position myself where once you're out there on your own and you're running your own firm, even if you've got partners around you, 3, 4 partners around you, it can be quite a very lonely place at times. And there's a lot of pressure on us as accountants to deliver because everybody looks to us for the answers and for the solutions and the support. And quite often accountants, I find, almost sacrifice their own businesses in making sure that they do provide that support for their clients. And so a lot of this and a lot of the work that we do is around getting the accountants to focus on their own business and to build the real value that's there. And brand is so important these days, I think, for many of us and for many of our clients. We tend to dismiss brand as for the big boys. Brand is for the big companies, for the big firms, when in fact brand is the one thing that can be unique about us. I love seeing the slogan behind you there, Philippa, where you talk about champion of the unique, because brand is the one thing that the rest of the world can't replicate. Yeah, because brand is about how we're perceived as a firm, and I think it's something that is increasingly important in a world where we're all seen to be the same and we're all pressing the same buttons. Brand is massively important these days. If we're going to achieve the rewards and satisfaction that we want to achieve in our firms, brand is a huge part of that.
Yeah, and before I introduce the slide and show you, you know, the branded accountant series as we see it, I'll add into that, which is I've heard from a lot of accountants who say there are constantly people shouting at them about what they should be doing. And they're currently managing, you know, all kinds of things and juggling teams, individuals, their own clients, and just getting the work done. And it's a very, obviously it takes time and it's a tricky business and things are constantly changing and they're having to move constantly. So we're not here shouting at them. We're here to say, this is a kind of a safe space for you to just sit back and think a little bit more about your firm and where you want it to go in the future. So without further ado, I will kind of introduce this slide here, which we'll take down, but let's just kind of set out our stall, Richard, for what we'd like to achieve with this. So from my perspective, I just want to talk about what brand is and how it can impact your day-to-day. And with the 6 videos, we will be looking at the issue of brand from many different angles. And what Richard will be doing, I hope, and I know in fact, will be contextualizing that for you, because I think sometimes when you've been in the sector for a long, long time, you can translate that and give great examples of how brand can be incorporated into your thinking rather than just seeing it as a logo, etc. Richard, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I agree. Brand is so closely associated with culture. And the culture of your firm is, I believe, the most powerful thing that you have. If you get the culture right, you attract the right clients, you attract the right team, you get a huge amount of satisfaction by going into the workplace every day because it's just right, it just feels like you wanted it to be. And brand, in my sort of layman's terms, is very much the perception of that and the external perception of that. So what I will talk about is how we can sort of, it's the practical interpretation of it. It's how we link branding to behavior, obviously to our marketing messages, but much wider than that. It's the relationships that we have with our clients, with our marketplace, with our teams, and the things that we can do in practice that will strengthen that link. But the more clarity we can bring to our culture, the better, and we achieve that through having a clear brand.
Yeah, and I think that's led us nicely into the second slide, which I will kind of pull up, and then we'll take it down again so that you can see our faces easily, should you wish, but it's not actually moving at the moment. Maybe it's just a slow, my slow computer. But on the next slide, it talks about, the real challenge that we hear from accountants, but also from the clients themselves, which is all accountants are the same. And I think what you were saying, Richard, there about the culture, that is the starting point. For me, when I'm working with an accountant, when I'm working with a firm, it's about their perceptions of their team, the environment, all of that good stuff, which is the real starting point. I will click to see you there, Richard, and say, do you hear a lot about all accountants are the same, and what would you say in response to that?
Absolutely, and I guess the starting point is, of course, we're not. We're, as accountants, we're different people. We're all very different. We have different values, different beliefs. We have different characteristics. We behave in different ways. But equally, I can fully understand from the marketplace's perception this view that all accountants are the same, in the same way that all banks are the same, and what have you. The reality is that when people look at our websites, when they look at the things that we do, the things that we say, then we do tend to offer the same services. We do tend to talk the same language. Once people know us as people, then they can start to appreciate the difference between us and any other accountant that they've met. But very much the outside perception is, accountants offer the same services, they talk the same language, they do the same things. We know that we need to differentiate ourselves as firms, and especially now, there is more competition than ever before when it comes to accountants. The model, the role of an accountant is changing fundamentally. For 500 years, pretty much we've done incomplete records. We've spent our time putting together, sorting out client messages, putting together accounts, putting together tax returns. Clients perceive that to be the role of the accountant. And now with digital transformation, we're moving into a world where we no longer need to do that, where we can do that quite literally at the press of a button. And so that's freeing up a huge amount of time for us to do some really valuable stuff with the client. We need to think about how we're going to use that time. We need to think about how we're going to educate clients to make use of that time. Yeah. But also we've got to be very, very aware that we've got a lot more competition in the marketplace. Whereas our competition used to come from the other firms of accountants in town, now it can come from the other side of the globe with online accounting. Now it can come from the fintech companies. We watch our televisions and see QuickBook and Xero advertising direct to our client base on those. We know all of the online banks now offering accounting services on their apps. So the competition is huge. Yeah. Increasing competition inevitably drives down price. So we need to think about, not that compliance is dead, because it isn't. There's more compliance than ever, but it's a much more competitive marketplace. So we need to be looking for other areas to generate value. And if we're going to do that, we have to educate the marketplace and our clients to understand that as accountants, we can offer different things. Yeah. And that's where an opportunity comes in to start to differentiate ourselves properly. The more we can build a clear view of our culture, of our beliefs, of our values, and of the value added that we can offer, the more we can differentiate ourselves from the competition, whether it be digital or otherwise.
Let me jump in there, because what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me, and that's, totally, I'm on the same page. And one of the things that I talk a lot about at the moment, and I think you picked it up as well, is about the increased competition out there because of online and digital. But I think also that things are shifting. Sectors are beginning to change and develop. And some obviously more slowly than others. So I would put accounting, kind of the legal sector as well, into that same kind of bundle, if you like, which is, up until this point, they haven't really had to think about branding issues because they've traded on word of mouth or reputation or referral. But actually, the customer or the client or that individual now has many choices to make, whatever it is in their lives, whether it's a drink or the accountant that they choose. And that more and more comes down to the message that an accountant puts out there, and maybe kind of what they look like as a brand, what they talk about, their ethos, their culture, as we've talked about. It's not just I'll use the guy on the high street who's local to me. It's very much more about, trying to find a business where, there is a relationship and that people hold the same values. And a brand is all about kind of putting the mirror up, if you like, and kind of going, do we match? Are we going to have a good relationship? So incredibly important, I think.
I agree. And I think that particularly now, as we're moving into this post-pandemic world, that we all now find ourselves in, people have changed. We've changed as individuals, and I think we need to recognize that. We need to recognize that the new generations coming through, whether it be Gen Z, millennials, that people are looking for different things than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and now than they were 12 months ago in some cases. And so we have to be very aware that it's not just now about delivering a set of accounts, delivering a tax return. It's not even about delivering the advice, because it's very hard for clients to tell the difference between the technical competence of an accountant, again, until they've experienced them. Things like relationship, communication, support, service, there's a lot more emotion tied into relationships these days. And I think that's a good thing, because it's back to this this is where the brand links in again, because where we're building more on personality rather than service lines, that gives us the opportunity to be unique, and it gives us the opportunity to work with clients who share those sorts of relationship values. That's a much more enjoyable world to be in, and so
and as you say, it has from a pricing perspective, and you picked up on that, and that perception of value as well. I mean, that's something which I think brand is wrapped up in, the pricing and the added value. And we've actually skipped quite nicely into, does brand matter? And I think what we haven't sort of picked up on enough yet is around price. And then just for the audience there, we're going to be looking at, is being different and having a brand even possible? How do people go about choosing you? And how do people know that you're different? So those are the sort of stepping stones that we're going to go through. We did have slides, but I think actually we're in a flow. But just for those people who want to know where we're going with this, we will be sort of wrapping it up at the end and giving you something to think about and test your own brand and the kind of the strength of that. But let's go back, Richard, to what you were talking about with this sense of value and price, and does brand really matter? And I think it does when it comes to price.
It certainly does. I mean, I've got a very practical example of that. Back in 2005, when we started up the last firm that we ran before we sold it 3 years later, my partner and I, we made a decision then to create a firm that was built entirely around the premise that we will only work with people who we enjoy working with. We'll become very non-accountant about this. We will focus entirely on the relationship, enjoying the relationship and enjoying our work, and let's see what happens to the profit. And to no one's surprise, the profit sorts itself out because everyone's motivated and what have you. And the pricing conversations changed entirely because it was about the value of the relationship for the client and for us. It wasn't about the service that we were going to sell. It wasn't about the product that we were offering. It was the start of taking a more emotional based approach to it. And of course, one of the first things that we had to do was, well, hang on, if we're going to do this, if we're going to only work with people who we enjoy working with, people need to know who they're going to be working with. And so our website has to reflect not necessarily our services, because again, people know what accountants do. It has to reflect us as people. People have got to look at that website and go, either they look like my sort of people, or no, they don't look like my sort of people. That had to be achieved. And it was surprising, A, how easy that was, and B, the commercial impact that had on the numbers.
Yeah, and I think just looking at that relationship aspect as well, it's brand is also about choosing the right target client for you, the ideal client for you. So, brand is not just a logo, as I think you said earlier on. It's the foundations of your business and how you're going to plan that going forward. So from a price perspective, you need to be very clear about the types of clients that you want to be working with, who they are, which sector, their attitudes, because that leads down would they be willing to pay this sort of price? Not even, do they like the brand? And so, we're providing added value, but are we attracting the right people to our business? Now, I'm working with a client at the moment who, he's gone down very much a sort of cheapest chips type option. And the way he's communicated out with his brand has, guess what? It's attracted people who want services that are as cheap as chips. And that means that they don't want to spend any more than they have to. The price is instantly talked about, and he's become essentially just a kind of a generic kind of service, which actually a lot of his clients don't value. And then the wrong clients, he was saying to me, they're tradespeople, which, don't get me wrong, is not a problem, but that's never where he intended his business to go. That's not what he enjoys. There are other accountants out there who can service volume and all of those good things, but that was never his intention. But because his brand was wrong and the message was wrong, he was getting the wrong clients in. And guess what? They were all over the place. And of course, price became the primary motivation. So, you know.
And there's a lot of frustration that comes through on both sides when you get that, when you end up with the wrong relationship. And we have to be very, very careful. This is why it really is important that our brand is authentic and matches us. We will all have suffered the frustration of signing up to be someone's customer because we love their website and the message on their website. And then when we join them, the experience is totally different. And that becomes frustrating for us as customers. It becomes a problem for the supplier as well, because we're complaining and we're moaning, and it's not a great relationship. Flip it around and get the marriage right from the outset, because we're buying what we thought we were buying, and it's an entirely different relationship for both parties. So it's, as accountants, we lose a lot of time through sorting out frustrated relationships. So far better to get that right at the outset by attracting the right sort of client, by giving them an authentic view of what we're all about, what we believe in, the sort of relationship that we're going to have, the promises that we make. It's a win-win for both sides. But do it wrong, mislead. Just buy a generic website and say, okay, this is what we are. We're proactive and we'll help you grow your firm and all the rest of it. It just adds to frustration on both sides.
So, Richard, the question that we both asked ourselves is it really possible to be different? And do we have real cases that change people's businesses as a result of just, as you said, getting the brand right, getting the culture right, and then having that kind of price value equation right, and having it then translate into the relationship and the level of service? Is it really possible?
It absolutely is. I remember back in 1990, it must have been about 1997, 1998, when we first sat down and said, okay, we need to differentiate ourselves as a firm of accountants. And it just seemed an impossible thing to do, because the bottom line is we offer the same services as all other accountants. We say the same things. And even though we knew which accountants were being authentic about that and which weren't, from an external view, the marketplace just saw the same services and the same comments. It was only once we twigged that actually it's not what we do, it's the way that we do it and how it's perceived that's mattered. And that suddenly made the whole thing an awful lot clearer. And I find that working with many, many firms today, we're not trying to find a unique service. We're trying to make sure that the firm better reflects its people, its values, because that's, a robot can pretty much copy anything I do these days, but it can't copy me. And once people understand that message, that actually this isn't about finding a unique service. It's about what is it about your business that makes it unique.
And
that means that anyone can do it. Anyone can do it, because we're talking about the people and the behavior and the values, not the services.
And I think just being careful here and saying it's not actually about one person, is it, necessarily? Because I do know people and clients of my own, accounting firms, who say, I don't want it to be all about me, because at some point I would want to leave the business. And we're not saying that at all, are we? We're actually saying what is the lifeblood, what is the DNA that runs through the firm, and how you actually approach the work. So as you said, it's not the what, it's the how you approach the accounting. And
it's the culture that you generate within that as well. There's nothing wrong per se with promoting a person. If you are seen as the accountant, there's nothing wrong with that. It's how you systemize and build your process and your cultures around that, so that you have a succession option. If you look at Virgin as an example, Virgin built everything around Richard Branson and around the Richard Branson persona and around his culture and what have you. Slightly less these days, but even so, it's indelibly linked. But when Richard Branson leaves the firm or dies or whatever, that won't be the end of Virgin, because of everything they've built around it. They're attaching the characteristics of a person with the characteristics of a business. And we can do that. Everyone can do that. As you say, what we don't want is the fact that clients think that that's, I can only deal with Richard Branson. That doesn't work as a business model.
Yeah, and you're totally right. And often I use Richard Branson or somebody at Apple, Steve Jobs or whatever, as an example, because you know, every business, whether it's an accounting firm or not, has started somewhere and has started with one or two people. And it's about that person's beliefs, their value systems, their ethics, their personality that actually brings a business to life. And so actually with Apple, for instance, when Steve Jobs left at one point, the business actually started collapsing because what happened was they didn't adhere to his sense of, you know, we have to have a purpose, we're more than computers, we're more than technology. You know, it's about bringing advancement to kind of the human race, if you like, which sounds very grandiose, but actually it works because it starts to mold all of their communications and their marketing messages. Now, obviously, from an accounting firm, you know, we need to think about what that means for them. So it doesn't, from my perspective, it doesn't need to be highfalutin at all. I know one client of mine who, you know, he basically says, whilst we have the technology to be more efficient, actually we feel that, you know, we pick up the phone constantly. We are face to face. We choose clients who we can go and visit their kind of factories. Those are the types of clients we like. Because we like talking. It's all about talking. It doesn't matter that our business is an accounting firm. Actually, our business is about talking with our clients. And so that we've started to take a view of how can we amplify that? How can we start to think about that firm in a different way? And of course, the message is, while everybody else is doing this, we're doing that. So, you know, while the world zigs, we zag, for instance. But, you know, it's finding little ins, little nuggets of insight, little nuggets of culture that can start to drive your brand message and the look and feel of your business as well.
Yeah, I think this is where the expertise of people like yourself is so important, because I was talking to a firm yesterday and we were chatting about this, because what really matters to them more than anything else is that they care. They care about their clients, they care about their team. And the point I was making to them was that that is such a powerful thing, and actually it's not represented at the moment in how they're perceived. Their clients know that they care and their clients love them. But if you were looking for an accountant and you just looked at their website or their marketing material or their offices, what you see is that they offer services, they offer the accounts and tax and what have you. And so we need to adapt the imagery, we need to adapt the content, we need to pull out the case studies, for instance, and the testimonials that demonstrate they care, they listen, they empathize with their clients, they're honest with their clients. And if you think from a client's perspective, they are very, very powerful messages, far more powerful than we are great at tax planning, we are great at financial advice, whatever it may be.
Yeah. And it's interesting, our next section was how do we, why should a business owner choose a branded up accountant, if you like? And I think we've talked quite a lot about that, and I think that there's clarity there, which is, you know, understanding the firm and what it's about and how you do business. You know, it kind of shows that you've done your research, you know who your ideal client is, so hopefully that business is like, this is me. But really it's about, once they've seen that website and they've had that mirror shown to them, as you said earlier on, a brand is all about translating what they first see into the experience long term. So it's the onboarding, the relationship that goes forward, and actually having a brand and knowing where you're going and a clear message, in fact, helps you to deliver the longer term kind of service level and type of service.
Yeah, it brings clarity to the vision, to the values, to the ethics, to the goals that you have as a business. That has enormous value with your team, you know, because you are attracting the right people. It's part of that engagement process that you have with your team, very much part of the engagement process that you have with clients. But, you know, as accountants, we have to accept that we can't do business with everybody who walks through the door. Yeah, we have to accept that there will be some people who don't like us. There'll be some people who don't think that we're their sort of accountant, and that's absolutely fine. Because we want to be spending our time with people who do like us, do respect us, do trust us, do feel that we are their sort of accountant. And we've got to remove these frustrations from our firm. And the more we can bring clarity to how people perceive us, as well as making sure that that perception actually matches up to the reality, that's how we remove frustration.
Totally. And I mean, we've talked a lot about the external relationship, with attracting the right client, etc., and putting out those messages. But just picking up on what you said then, which is all about the team as well. I mean, frequently teams feel, that they are often not on the same page. They often don't know where the business is going. They don't know what the vision is. If the culture is not great, then actually there's nothing to hang on to. It's a pretty miserable existence, isn't it? But if the culture is defined and the vision is there and everybody knows what the aspirations of the brand are, of the firm, then that makes a completely different ship to run, doesn't it?
And you talked earlier about this succession issue and the need to be able to separate yourself from all of the activities within your business. You need your team engaged to be able to do that, and you need your team on the same wavelength, as you're saying, with the same values, with the same goal, with the same vision. Even if they don't have your experience, they know how to behave, they know how to help a client, they know when to step in and support. And if you just try and wrap it all around yourself, then that's when you do find yourself trapped in the business and how am I going to get out of this business in years to come? How can I delegate? So the same engagement that applies to clients applies to the team, and that constant messaging and that unseen force that comes through the brand that wraps itself around all of that. One feeds off the other. That a strong culture gives you a stronger brand. A stronger brand gives you a stronger culture. The two are just indelibly linked like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, I mean, we've been banging on about the importance of brand. And I guess for anybody who's watching this, it will be, well, how do I know where I'm at? Am I different? Are there gaps? Is this something I should be thinking about? I mean, we had a long chat about that, didn't we? In terms of what should an accountant who is thinking about brand, what should they be doing now as a result of this video and just generally?
I think from my perspective, from a layman's perspective, there's two areas, because there's looking at the tools of your brand, which is things like your website and your offices and the physical evidence of your brand. But the other one is to understand how you are being perceived at the moment, what your starting point is. We've talked about teams, we've talked about clients, talked about marketplace. Well, they will have existing views on your business, and I think understanding not what you think your firm is seen as, but how other people are actually seeing it is an important measure.
Yeah, and I've actually been saying quite a lot over the last year, where obviously lockdown and everything that's been associated with that, there've been lots of challenges, but one of my constant messages is ask the team as well. Speak to the team about what their perceptions are of the business. So it's absolutely agree with you around finding out where you sit in the market, how your clients perceive you and other people, by the way, because you want to get a mix, don't you? But equally find out what the team thinks, what are their aspirations, what is their vision, where do they think the business should be going? Do they actually think that there's a brand there? Now, the example of that for me was a few months back, where actually when you started speaking to individuals, they all said, we kind of feel that there's something that gels us together, but we've never really defined what that is. And actually, if you look at our website and all of that other externally facing stuff, it doesn't really, we just don't feel that that reflects us. Now that's quite it could be perceived as quite a superficial comment, but what we all want at the end of the day is to be proud of where we work. That's incredibly important, because actually it's the people who work within the firm who are your brand ambassadors, who talk about what they do, talk about the firm. And if they're really proud of it, we'll start to refer like that. So actually very important to understand where they see us, where they see you as well. So looking to talk to them as well, and giving them the space and the kind of permission, if you like, to say what they want, warts and all. And I guess from my perspective, from Insight 101's perspective, what we offer is that service, which means that there is less emotion in it. So, you know, the owner is able to distance themselves, and the teams feel that they can talk separately about how they feel about the business. And then it's trying to understand, you know, the positives and the overriding kind of what really works, as long with, you know, what could change. But that's incredibly important, I think.
I think we also have to be honest with ourselves. If we're going to go down a process of any sort of change, you know, whether it be changing our brand or our systems or whatever it may be, we have to be honest with ourselves, or accept that we're not going to achieve the sort of change that we're looking for. It surprises me how many times I will talk to a firm of accountants, particularly to one who's a new client. Obviously, I'll do my homework beforehand and I'll look at their website and what have you, and then I'll get into a conversation with the directors. The number of times I say, you know, having met you guys, it's been a great conversation, you know, really enjoy what you do, you've got some great ideas there and all the rest of it. That's not the impression I get from your website. Your website doesn't tell me that. And they'll go, yeah, we know we need to change that. Or, you know, your offices don't give me that sort of feel. And that, yeah, we know we need to do a bit of work. There's an acceptance there that this link doesn't matter. And I make the point to them that actually, if I was picking an accountant right now, yeah, having met you guys, I would pick you as my accountant. But having looked at your website, your offices beforehand, I might not even have made a meeting, because you didn't come across as different. I like what I've met. That's not what I'm seeing beforehand. And I think where accountants are open to that and go, okay, we know we need to change. It's like with the team, where they're going, look, we want to hear what our teams say, and we will absorb that. We want to hear what our clients say, and we'll absorb that. Not, I want to hear what our clients say and I'll argue against it. Because whether we agree or disagree, if that's how people perceive us, that's how people perceive us. That has become the reality, hasn't it? You know, it's no good saying, oh, well, they've misunderstood. Well, in that case, let's make the message clearer. But you know, we have to be prepared to change. We have to be prepared to adapt. We have to be prepared to accept that, you know, that logo that we've been attached to for the last 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, isn't now the right sort of view. We've changed as a firm, we've changed as people, but our logo hasn't changed. Our offices haven't changed. Our website hasn't changed.
Yeah, it's interesting the number of times over the years, and I mean this across business sectors, who've said, we rarely win business without meeting the person, you know, because it's all about us. And we know that that's important, but equally what we know as well is, just with the last 12 months or so, you can't always meet face to face. You know, a Zoom call is as good as it gets. So there has to be something else that enables you to convey what you're all about, to at least encourage somebody to pick up the phone, or to arrange a Zoom call. So as you said, a website is not the be all and end all. It has to, you know, everything has to work together. But let's face it, it's your digital shop window, isn't it, really? You know, everything that you stand for is going to be in there. And actually, the about page is the most frequently visited page. So people want to know about you and want to know about how you operate, rather than what you do, because the assumption is that you do pretty much what everybody else does, unless you say differently.
Yeah.
So,
and I think also it's important, this, yeah, we're dealing with some real fundamentals here, because yeah, we've talked about the impact of brand on attracting business, on engagement with teams, engagement with clients, on the profitability of the business. But this has a lot to do with being proud about what you've achieved as a firm. You know, we want to have businesses that we are proud of, and to be able to walk into our offices, look at our website, look at our material, look at our team, look at our culture, behaviour, and be proud of what we see is a big tick to us deciding whether we've been successful in business or not. And one of the beauties, I think, of focusing on brand is that it's not necessarily a difficult thing to change. This is not something that needs an awful lot of money spending on tech and changing systems and processes. What it needs is people to look at their firms in a different way, in a more open, honest way, and to understand then how they can adapt that so that people are seeing this truer view of their firm. And that's, we get rid of so much stress, so much frustration, so many positives in terms of pride and reward through changes that are very non-accountant, very, it's not necessarily about system, not necessarily about process. It's much more about this consistency, this honesty, this authenticity, and being, as accountants, being prepared to express ourselves more for the people that we are and the things that we believe in. And almost being prepared to step outside of this box that's got accountant stamped on the outside of it.
Yeah, so we've got around 5 minutes left to go. Time has marched on. But at this point, we really want some takeaways, don't we? We want to kind of give the accountants who are watching some kind of thoughts on what they should be doing. And for me, what you've just said is really something that they should think about. So, if you are in your offices now, and you will be operating again from your office, look around at the moment and see, does it reflect who you are? Look at the paintings, the furniture, all of that good stuff, which people sort of take for granted when they're in a firm. Actually have a look around and see what a potential client would see. But then, of course, moving that into the digital space, I would really say, look at your website and look around at some of those competitors and see whether you have managed to convey your personality, your tone of voice, and how you actually do business around there. And is there one particular message that is coming out of your website for your brand? Whether it's, we do talking or whatever it is, what is that fundamental message that you want to get across? And if somebody was reading your website, would they know that they were ideal? So is it obvious who you're trying to target as well? So those are the three things. The physical, have a look about all the elements of your brand, but then the digital, look at your website and say, does it really match with who you are? Does it say how you operate? And does it actually talk directly to the people that you want? What would you say on
Yeah,
that?
I definitely agree with that. I like to do an exercise where, we get the accountant to ask their team and to ask their clients to describe their firm. What words would you use to describe my firm? And ideally just single words, and get as long a list as possible, but that can be real eye-opening. I think also there is a need here for the accountant to revisit their vision, revisit their values, understand why they do what they do, what really matters to them. I know that sounds a bit management consultancy, but it's so important because, to understand why am I doing this? What am I trying to achieve? What really matters to me? And then is that then reflected in the messages on my website? Is it reflected in my offices? How, if I want to help clients, does the word help even appear on my website?
Yeah.
What are the images about? Are the images about adding machines, or are the images about me working with a client? It's that sort of thing. So I think you do have to go through this process of going, why am I doing this? And not just to have a bigger firm or to make more money, but fundamentally, why am I doing this? What do I want to achieve for myself? Yeah. And is that then reflected in the brand and the imagery that people are seeing, the content that people read?
Great stuff. And I think that we're obviously going to be talking a lot more about brand and how you can start to think differently about that. And also in the next series, the next episode rather, we're going to be talking about time as the enemy. And that's all about, never got enough time to actually work on the business rather than in it. We're going to talk a little bit more about, you know, what the challenges are, but also trying to shift that mindset and showing examples where actually taking time out to just think a little bit more and interrogate your portfolio of clients, etc., can get you to a better place. So that's the next episode. But before we kind of leave everybody, I should kind of just share our branding, the Branded Accountant. This is the first in a series of 6 videos. And of course, the statement about being bold is what we're all about today. But this is us. It's the Richard and Philippa show. Obviously, Richard, you know, a little bit more sort of talking about the sort of the coaching and looking at that area. And I'm obviously the brand person. But, you know, we obviously encourage you to join us again for the next episode. But obviously, if there has been a chord that's been struck, as we've spoken here today, then, you know, pick up the phone or drop us an email. You know, we can either use that feedback and answer any questions in the next episode, or we can get back to you directly. Richard, what would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, very much so. If it's prompted any thoughts or questions, by all means get in touch. As you say, the contact details are there. I appreciate the barriers that sit waiting for you in accounting firms when it comes to these sort of changes. Time is a big one. You know, resources, delegation, having the right people around you, having the right sort of clients. We will talk about all those in the coming episodes that we do on this. But I think the point that I would want to get across at this stage is that it isn't as insurmountable as it often seems. It isn't as difficult as it seems. It's almost at this point about having the commitment to go, okay, you know, it's that line there. Let's be bold. Let's be prepared to think a little bit differently about our firm and how we move it forward.
Great, thanks, Richard. So that's us. That was the first episode. We're looking forward to talking about time and the enemy of time, and how we can reframe that thinking and how we can talk about brand and what benefits that would bring. But for now, that's it. That's the 45 minutes done. So I shall say goodbye, and goodbye to those who are watching, and hope you found it very, very useful.
Yes, goodbye everyone.
See ya. Bye everybody.